So, looking back at the lesson that you just did, you have 4 activities that you did with Isaac, and right off the bat, we had no idea how sick he was.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're taking that into consideration with his responses to you.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what I really liked was that this time you clearly broke up what you were doing into recognizable segments, and you were able to go from concrete and known, or we assumed he knew his vowels, and we found out he struggled a little with that short O, and I have seen that working with him. He tends to want to call it a different sound, and then he has to think it through.
Right.
Which usually it's short E that kids struggle with, but for him it's that short O piece. And then how clearly, and it was beautifully done, Steph, you cleared up that, and then you helped him through the short U so that he got back on track with the activity that you were trying to do. And then you moved along to the board activity. I would suggest, since he responds better to hands-on, that either he go to the board himself, or that you have those ready on some sort of flashcards or something that he can manipulate. And again, you weren't sure how he was going to react to the short vowels, so I can see where you were sort of diagnosing as you were going and trying to figure out what he knew and what he didn't. And then the Scrabble letter tile, the whole hands-on thing is right where he is. Even though he's a 7th grader and he's 14, you are struggling, and I think succeeding right now, to find the balance between I want to treat him with the dignity of a 14-year-old but teach him at a 2nd or 3rd grade level. And so the last 2 activities were really good for him to demonstrate what he knew to you independently. Even though you were guiding him through the process, he was really able to show you what he knew. And as sick as he was, that's when he perked up. Was like, oh, hands on, something I can manipulate, something I can move around and do. So I thought you did that really well. And I think it's good that you're looking at those resources we talked about and saying, okay, here's a resource on his grade level. Now, how can I turn this into an activity that won't demean him?
Right.
And so with the different things that you were trying to accomplish in this lesson, one, the English language learners, we talked about the fact that he's not a traditional ELL, but he has such gaps and deficits that you really are teaching him English in the process of the other things that you're working with. The reading and the language arts, the grammar are all parts of him gaining things that he needs to develop his language skills. So I don't think you're that this is a traditional necessarily learning support for ELL, but you're certainly doing it. You're doing it with him. You're seeing, as you're working with him, more and more of the depth of the gaps that he has. And the other thing that we were looking at was how you respond to your students in different ways. And it's clear that you want to give him that dignity for being an older student with such young issues that you're trying to help him with. And I think you're asking questions. Can you look at his file? Can you see where he's come from? You're talking to grandma. Can I get information about his past? What could have caused some of these gaps and delays for him? And and just reading over as much as you can about him is only, I think, improving how you're relating to him. And you're really trying to meet him where he is and then move him along the continuum the best that you can. Do you have questions or comments about things that you saw within that lesson? And again, we're fully taking into consideration how sick he turned out to be.
Yeah, I think it's more of just like a learning experience for me, kind of like to see where he is. I'm trying to find out where exactly his ground is to build from. So I think starting at a lower level, building his confidence, and then like trying to move forward on bringing in different things is kind of like my strategy for him. So I guess it's just like kind of trying to work and see what works for him, what doesn't, and see what his best ways of learning and stuff for me.
Sure. And we've talked about introducing some technology, which he's going to love because obviously he's a screener.
Yeah.
And then he's also just anything that's hands-on. And what I noticed was when he's doing something physically with his hands, he's no longer distracted by some of the things around him.
Yeah.
Which when there isn't something, if he's just listening to you or he's watching what you're doing, or any teacher that's working with him, everything, the doorbell distracts him, a phone ringing distracts him. But when he's engaged with his hands, there's a real change in him. And so I'm glad to see you're capitalizing on that.
Perfect.